Panama has changed their Friendly Nations Visa requirements. And this is just breaking news. We just got notification of this yesterday from the Panamanian government that the requirements are changing. And for most people, the changes probably aren't good. And I think the changes are going to affect up to 90% of the people who I've talked to who are thinking about this visa, and will probably disqualify at least half of the people who were actually serious and were going to think about getting it in the first place. And it also makes it a possibly not as good of an option for many of the people who are thinking about it. So this is information that you absolutely want to know. This is breaking news. It's right out. It's a little bit different from our normal style, but that's all coming up today on Renegade News. Welcome back to Renegade News. I'm your host, Glenn Kowalski. Today we have some breaking news for you, so we're going to get right into it. The Panama Friendly Nations Visa has changed. As of August 5th or August 19th, the dates are still kind of unclear on how they're actually rolling this out, but it is official. We got news on it yesterday from the Panamanian government. The requirements for the visa have changed. In the past, with the Panama Friendly Nations Visa, all it was required to qualify was to be in one of the 50 nations that were included in the Panama Friendly Nations Program. You had to have about $5,000 in the bank, and they didn't have to stay there, just had to be in there for long enough to record your balance. And you needed up to about $4,000 in fees, depending on who you work with. And that was really about all that was required. There was a bunch of paperwork and background checks, those types of things. But once you qualified, you would get Panamanian permanent residency from that visa. The entire program has now changed. And we're going to talk about what some of those changes are. So the first big change to be aware of is with the 50 nations that are included. If you were coming from Taiwan, that's been scrapped. That's been scrapped immediately. Can no longer qualify for the Friendly Nations Visa if you're coming from Taiwan. Also, no new countries will be added to the program. So right now, I guess that brings us to 49 nations that are in the program. And as those, for whatever reason, if they drop them, any countries out of that, then it will continue to decline. They will not be adding any new countries to the program. So the first major change that's coming in the visa process is that it's no longer going to be an instant permanent residence. The Friendly Nations Visa will now be a 2-year temporary visa that allows you to, after 2 years, apply for permanent residency. In order to apply for that permanent residency, you're going to have to wait until the end of the 2 years is up, and within the last 30 days before it expires, so no more than 30 days and no less than when it actually expires, is the time period in the window where you're going to need to apply for that permanent residency. So the window is going to be very short there. In addition, now in order to get that 2-year Friendly Nations Visa, where it used to be just a matter of starting up a corporation, spending about $1,400 to create a corporation here and so you own a business in Panama. Owning the business in Panama is no longer part of the deal. Now, in order to do it, you're going to have to justify why you want that 2-year visa. And there's only a couple ways you can do that. The first way to do it is by getting a job in Panama for a Panamanian company. So you have to actually secure employment, not within one of the protected fields, but in a field where it's proven that they need to have foreign workers. And you have to come in with that work, get that work visa, and get the Friendly Nations Visa as part of that work visa. The important part being with that visa is you have to have the work secured before you can even apply or think about applying. The next way that you can qualify for that visa is through an investment in real estate. And that investment in real estate has to be above the value of $200,000. Fortunately, the requirements also allow you to finance that property as long as you finance within Panama with a Panamanian bank. So you can actually get a mortgage for that $200,000 or more purchase. However, since this is so new, I'm not sure how the banks are going to actually handle the mortgage process, and getting a mortgage in Panama is far from easy and far from guaranteed. You'll need a large deposit. You're going to need to prove income, probably from that Panamanian job, which is not going to be long enough, or proving some kind of a pension income to actually prove that you can afford the mortgage. And like I said, it's not an easy thing to accomplish, at least it wasn't before. So unless some rules are changing in the banking industry, getting a mortgage is far from guaranteed. Important thing to remember is that in order to get the visa, you now have to invest in real estate. of a value of $200,000. That real estate that you buy in has to be in your own name. In the past, a lot of real estate that was done in Panama, you did through a corporation, just to keep it more private. Now that real estate has to be done in your own name. That could, I've heard indications that could change in the future, but right now, you have to buy $200,000 in real estate or more in your own name. It can be financed, but it has to be financed via Panamanian bank. So anyway, these are massive changes that are coming. A lot of people were planning on coming down, getting that inexpensive visa option and having it as a plan B, even if they didn't plan on living here. That is completely almost unavailable now. You have to get a job in Panama. So you either have to get a job in Panama and live here to actually do that job, or you could technically use it as a plan B if you buy a second home in Panama, but you have to be able to afford to buy at least $200,000 worth of real estate in order to do that. And then you can rent it out or whatever. At that point, it doesn't matter once you've qualified. But keeping in mind that it's only a temporary 2-year visa, so there isn't a whole lot of point in a plan B of just having something sitting there as a plan B option if you're not going to turn it into permanent. In 2 years, you will be able to turn it into permanent. Like I said, they haven't given out any of the requirements. I would presume they'd be fairly straightforward. I don't expect that they would force people to purchase real estate and then all of a sudden turn their backs and say that you can't actually get the visa. However, if you get the visa via a job, I can definitely see if you didn't have that job anymore, I could definitely see there being a problem. So you probably have to maintain that job through the 2 years, through your application process, and at least be working there and show that you intend to keep on working there in order for that temporary residency to turn into permanent. If you plan on qualifying for the old visa, and I'm going to put a link to it at the end of this video, I'll probably do an info card on it as well. If you plan on qualifying for the visa, under the old rules, you have to get moving. You have to move right now. The new rules, they seem to kick in on the 20th. There's a date being flown around on the 5th as well. I don't know if that's the 5th is when you have to apply by or whether you have to be approved by that 5th. But I would just assume that by the beginning of August, you want to have your visa in place and solidified if you want to get under the old rules. Otherwise, you're going to come in under the new rules. On a slightly more positive note, there is a new visa, Nomad Visa, coming in for digital nomads, for people who want to just live in Panama temporarily and do work outside of Panama in a digital capacity, either for a remote company or for a company that does not generate business in Panama. The requirements for that will be that you don't earn money within Panama, so you have no Panamanian clients, but I'll do a separate video on that when we have a few more of the details. For now, this has been Renegade News. This is some breaking news. The news is just out. As we get any updates, we will definitely give them out to you. And until then, if you haven't subscribed yet, you don't want to miss these updates. You don't want to miss any of our strategies. So subscribe to Renegade News right now so that every week you hear the latest news on the latest infringements and wins in your fight for more freedom and more liberty.